Hey there guys, this is Obsidian Chill. Got another video for you today. This is a continuation of my guide series. We're on to Earth. Earth is going to be the final one of my series of tanking videos. And as usual, at the pinned comment at the very top of this video in the comment section, you'll find basically timestamps to each relative section of this video. So if you're looking for just the DPS parsers or the tanking section, supercharge testing, loadout artifacts, look for those timestamps in that comment and you'll be able to take you right there. Because I know obviously these guide videos are quite long in duration because of all the material that's covered. So just use those timestamps to skip to the section that you are looking for or kind of continue on through there with the video. Earth itself is kind of a unique power because it took a very long time for Earth to be considered above average. When Earth came out in DLC 3, wasn't good whatsoever. Even basically Earth staple was always spamming Jackhammer back in the day. Jackhammer was precision based, so Earth was basically a precision based power set. And even in the prime of clipping during Origin Crisis, the only rotation I found that could be competitive was, I'm not sure if you've seen it on this channel, but it's basically, using all 6 powers within a few seconds of each other with phase dodge and having the most clip heavy intensive rotation. Earth was still kind of lackluster. Earth started to get a bit better during the AM days, just with how the pet power worked. So it's basically you're just running speed drain, giving as much power possible. You're dropping supply drops on Crystal. Everything you could do to power Crystal because that's where all your damage came from, which is something I wasn't a fan of because it's not you doing the damage. It was basically all Crystal, but that's how Earth had to manage back in the day. Earth tanking has always been kind of the battle of two choices because you've always had brick tanking, you've always had Aftershocks, and at some point brick was way better, sometimes Aftershocks was way better, sometimes they're the same. It's always been kind of a tug of war between Aftershocks and brick tanking, which one is better in certain situations, which one gives you the best survivability, and it still kind of continues to this day, which you'll see when I cover that tank footage. What I didn't actually expect when I went Earth is actually how much armories are required. It reminds me of my nature setup. So we've got single target regular, we've got melee AoE, we've got single target range, we've got brick, we've got Aftershocks, we've got range AoE, and we've got battle tanking. So what was that? That's 7 armories just for Earth. And obviously you can only put 4 on there. So that's the interesting setup with Earth. I didn't expect this many armories, but there's just so many choices. So let's kind of get into the video here. Take care guys, hope you enjoy. Okay, the DPS spec for Earth follows the same kind of structure as all my other Might guides. Let's get into the skill point spec here. It's always going to be super powered focused. Hybrid doesn't really exist in this game. Weapon experts is going to be just for precision. You're going to max out your critical attack and critical attack damage. Then you're going to put everything into might and power. And then after that, really, there's nothing important. Health is going to be important because you're obviously going to be melee range for most of the time as Earth, unless it's going to be single target or elite. Even on the elite adds to be melee. So basically health is just kind of the primary set you just dump in because you're not going to be using your weapon at all, just the kind of weapon tap for the blast adapter. Iconic powers, you don't need to take any iconic powers as Earth. There's nothing beneficial. Super speed, this is important. One of my melee rotations are dependent on super speed. So if you are super speed, you're going to have to follow this step because you're going to have to take Whirling Dervish, which is all the way down, and you're going to have to take phase dodge, depending on once they get to loadout. But this is how you're going to want to spec there. So Tornado Pull, once again, that's just you can take dash attack. Tornado Pull doesn't matter, a single target. You're not going to use it. I take the resistances. You don't necessarily have to, but you do need to take phase dodge, and you do need to take Whirling Dervish. For weapons, once again, one-handed, you just put enough in to get the lunge. That's all you're using it for. But there's no specific weapon that's required for Earth at all. In terms of gear spec, once again, follows the same kind of structure. Weapon is going to always have blast adapter. The head mod is going to be supercharged and tomb. There's not too many cases you'd be running Earthquake. I'll get into that later, but if you are going to use Earthquake, once again, just use the Supercharged Earthquake mod, but essentially that's where it boils down to. Neck is always going to be Escalating Might. Back mod is going to be Accelerated Jackhammer, just because that follows. Accelerated Jackhammer is not always completely necessary, but it also is helpful for Aftershock Tanking and the OP back. You don't want to change the mods back and forth. So once again, the OP back Since it's being a singular mod, if you don't want to change it each time you switch between DPS and tanking, accelerated jackhammer does completely fine. And there's not really, you could technically run Berserker, that's about the only other mod you could run if you want to keep changing it. But you might find some usage out of accelerated jackhammer regardless. Chest mod is going to be always extended supercharge. Now, the penetrating strikes and core strength are the other options you can run in here. They've been buggy on and off, like not actually showing the true effects. So I like to run extended supercharge just because I know at least I'll get the bonus from this. But you could also run penetrating strikes or core strength. It's just that I can't kind of state their reliability at this moment. They've been buggy in the past. I'm not sure if they still are. Leg mod, there's nothing really important for legs. Once again, the healing is very low. I'm not using localized tremor anyway, so you don't need a leg mod at all. In terms of hands, there's always going to be max damage. Now the feet, this is the other very important thing for this melee spec. You're going to need the dashing combos, which is basically in your feet mods. Like you'd have, like, you know, you'd have explosive block, deadly block, tumbling master. It's going to be dashing combos. So basically, to tap to perform a dash attack combo following vortex trap, tornado pull, cyclone push, or whirling dervish, or phase dodge. So basically, I'll show you this in the loadout section, but this is a very important mod that you're going to need for this build. In terms of artifacts, or in terms of, we can touch on the trinket first, but obviously Sailor Sunken Rune for AoE Melee. If I'm using Signal Target, then I'll be using Atlantean Seahorse. Just a DPS trinket. Orbital and Supply Drop is going to max out those. In terms of artifacts, it's pretty much always going to be Soul Amplifier, Scrap the Soul Cloak, and Eye of the Gemini for Earth. Now there is one variation in the single target that I'll get to as well, but that's going to be the Granorum pet. Technically, you can run this as the AoE Melee as well, but the thing is, since you're doing Melee, you're doing Unstoppable, so you're using a Supercharge Generator, which is basically one of the staples of Earth, being able to clip your Supercharge Generator. It's just unfortunate it's a melee range, just like some of the power slots like Rage. But you do get a lot of bonuses out of running Scrap the Soul Cloak with Earth. And obviously Gemini's effects are kind of self-spoken. And obviously you need Soul Amplifier just because, well, you need for single target because you're using Heat Vision. I mean, technically, once again, you could put the Granor on, but then you're losing 1% might as well as the base might as well, 890 might versus 381. So the pet damage versus the extra prec, which you're not going to take advantage of anyway. So it's pretty much still the cliche meta for artifacts, except for the one single target build, which you'll be using the Gnorm instead of the Soul Cloak, just because you're at range, so you can't use Unstoppable anyway. So there's no point if you can't use Unstoppable. But that essentially rounds out the gear for Earth. Okay, so we get into the AoE Melee Rotation. This is pretty much carbon copy of most AoE Melee Rotations out there for Earth. I do switch in one power, but it's very common to have obviously Crystal, Entomb. You're going to have Unstoppable, you're going to have Jackhammer. You're going to have some people may not run Tectonic Break, they may run Debris Field or something, but obviously Tectonic Break is much more damage, which you'll see in the rotation. But most players that I know using endgame rotations are already clipping Tectonic Break. Some may not be, but they should have been. Basically, the difference in mine is Whirling Dervish, and I'll show you that in a moment. Basically, there is two other options that you can use. Obviously, you're going to say, oh, what if I'm not super speed? Well, obviously, you can run Fortified Golem. That's going to be the most kind of carbon copy loadout out there for Earth. You're still going to be clipping Tectonic Break with Unstoppable, going straight into Jackhammer, rinse and repeat. And then the odd time, if you're like clipping a Soda or clipping a Trinket, you can run a Fortified Golem to give a little bit more power to Crystal. Crystal itself doesn't do anything like any kind of massive damage, so it doesn't make any sense to keep spamming Fortified Golem off cooldown because you'll be losing damage compared to what Jackhammer spam will give you. It's just in those moments, like say an ad dies and you're about to launch a second one, pop Fortified Golem, or say the ads die and a wave hasn't come out yet. It's just for those breaks in combat that you can use Fortified Golem to give Crystal a bit more power because she does regen power very slowly. So that's basically, if you're flight, if you're acrobats, kind of disregard what I'm going to say following and use Fortified Golem. The other option that I do, some players use, like Tumbling Master, he's used it. He uses Phase Dodge. Now, essentially, what that is basically it just gets you into jackhammer faster. So you'd clip Tectonic Break with Unstoppable with phase dodge, so they go straight into jackhammer. You know, it saves you maybe like half a second or so on your DPSing, but you know the same concept where all the damage comes from jackhammer. So as soon as you can get into jackhammer faster, leaves you a little bit better time. So that's one option as well. However, I found a little bit better. Well, it's situational, but the potential is better with this one than I found in my testing, and that's using Whirling Dervish. Now, you've seen Whirling Dervish in my Fatigate before, but in this one, I'm using it differently. So, like I said in my spec, I'm using the dashing combo foot mod. Now, what this does, so if I go Whirling Dervish, this is typical like Whirling Dervish here. And then you'd have to wait for the animation to expire, and the whole time I'm vulnerable to block. But with the dashing combo mod, as soon as I hit Whirling Dervish, I can cancel it. So basically, all you have to do is do a tap melee, Whirling Dervish, cancel. Whirling Dervish, cancel. But the advantage is that cancel actually does damage. So you'll see here, like Whirling Dervish, I gotta cancel crystals. Summon crystal, please. There we go. Okay, so obviously this is normal Whirling Dervish. And Whirling Dervish with that foot mod, as you're going to see, there's the extra tick. So you get like one extra bit of burst damage. It's a little bit easier to see on the 3 targets. So if I cancel, hit Dervish, boom. So I got the 3 ticks from Dervish as well as a tick of AoE damage from the actual mod. So that was just 1 tick of Dervish and then the actual mod explosion. And you can see, since using the foot mod, it cancels Dervish quickly enough where you're not completely vulnerable after the fact. So the downside, obviously, to Whirling Dervish is that I'm vulnerable to block. So if you keep spamming it on ads and blocking, you get knocked down, leads to a damage loss. But since this Dervish is very quick to cancel, the likelihood of you getting blocked consistently from it is very low. Like you would have to have an ad, or you'd have to do Whirling Dervish on an already blocking ad to get knocked down, which obviously you can see and just not do it because it cancels very quickly there, and can lead to some decent damage because Whirling Dervish splits very well. So if it's like a big dog pile worth of ads and I'm canceling it, you do obviously it doesn't show as well here because they're all spread out, but obviously a tank would have them nice and close together. But it's very solid damage as well because Whirling Dervish splits very well. And the nice thing about it is as well, say you get you do jackhammer, something happens, you get screwed up or knocked out of jackhammer. If you're using phase dodge, there's no damage there. If you're using Fortified Golem, you can hit Fortified Golem, but there's not like an instant power return where if I get knocked out of jackhammer, I can go back into Dervish because it's got that 3-second cooldown, which gives me time to have jackhammer off cooldown. So that's essentially the loadout there. It's very important to have that foot mod to cancel it because obviously you don't want to spend too much time in Dervish because then you're just wasting damage. So it turns into I'm using Dervish right before I go into jackhammer before I go back into the clip, which you'll see in the rotation. So that's essentially the loadout there. You can use phase dodge. It does get you in jackhammer a bit faster. It's just whatever you're comfortable with. You can use Fortified Golem if you're not, obviously if you're not super speed. But if you are super speed, it does give you the option to mess around with Dervish for a little bit extra damage potential. So we'll get into the rotation here. Okay, so you can see I definitely needed the help of Tumbling Master there, because Dervish is a very power intensive rotation, but it's realistic that you can still do it within a raid. Like I've done this in raid footage and haven't had an issue with like okay trolls. It's just obviously in sparring target situation it gets pretty power intensive. So we start off with 52k. That's obviously with the crystal being at full power, and then but even then it drops down to like 46, 43, 47 at normal crit chances, like 24, 20%, 27% are not unrealistic crit parsers. I've seen them you can get up to like in the mid 50s for sure, even a 30k parse, because even the 52k is only 24%. So it is nice from that aspect. Let's see, break it down here. You do have some options though. Like I said, you can use phase dodge. Did I phase dodge? Yeah, so you can technically use phase dodge in that spec and get similar results, which is basically just going straight into jackhammer. Like I said, the only advantage that Dervish has that you'll see more is on 8 targets, because Dervish splits very well compared to other powers. You have the option that you can be vulnerable to block. The foot mod does knock you out pretty early, so you're not vulnerable, but it still can happen. So like I said, you can switch between phase dodge, fortified golem if you want to clip with a soda or trinket, or phase dodge, depending on what your options are. But I think the highest potential is going to be using just Dervish cancel if you're super speed. Obviously, if you're not super speed, you use fortified golem, because there's not really an equivalent for acro or flight. But it's still, the parsers are very high end. You can compete against nature DPS with this aspect, because the advantage is nature melee and earth melee, even rage melee. They're fairly close together, but the difference is rage has berserk and earth has entomb, where nature just has basically the Gemini cheese with wolf. So if you're competing against a nature DPS and say in a comp or in a DPS, whatever, the advantage is you've got a similar melee rotation, so that you're not too far different on the parsers, but you've also got a supercharge that'll do like 200 to 400k damage, which earth doesn't, or nature doesn't have. So there's the results of the rotation there. Still very competitive damage for melee AoE, and then we'll be on to the next. Okay, so with Earth single target, you do have 2 variations. One's going to be the melee single target, and one's going to be a safer range single target. So firstly, with the melee single target, it's the first setup is very similar to the AoE melee one, which is going to be Tectonic Break clip with Unstoppable. This basically, Tectonic Break and Unstoppable are still pretty good on single target in terms of their single target damage, as well as obviously you have the Supercharge Generator, which helps for Entomb spam, which Entomb's good on single target as well. You have Amplified Heat Vision, which is more of a standard single target loadout. And then you have Upheaval spam basically between so Tectonic Break clip Unstoppable into Heat Vision, have the Burning Dot ticking from that, and then Upheaval until you can go back into Tectonic Break. So if you've never been Earth before, Upheaval, you can basically continue it. Think of it as like Jackhammer. You can basically keep hitting tapping melee and continuing it. Same with the Upheaval. So you can just kind of keep tapping melee and keep doing upheavals up to another three times. I believe it's 3 times for a total of 4. The initial one and 3. Yeah. The same thing. So the issue with this rotation, you do have to be melee for it, so it's good for regular content. Even elite footage, you can still use it. Because Tectonic Break, Unstoppable, and Upheaval are AoE, it still does really good damage if there's a boss and adds, as opposed to pure single target. So Unstoppable range is about right here. Same thing, Tectonic Break is going to be hitting from there, and Upheaval obviously is range, so is Heat Vision. But you just have to make sure you're at least, what's that, probably 2 squares, like 10 feet, 10, 15 feet away to be able to hit on both. So really it is melee, but you can afford to stand, you don't have to be right in the boss's face. You can still be a little bit distance away, and still get the damage from Tectonic and Unstoppable, but you certainly can't be range at all. So let's kind of show you the rotation here. Okay, so what have you seen with Earth? Earth single target by no means is good at all. If basically Earth single target follows the same, where did I kind of start? I started here. Earth single target follows the same kind of approach as Rage, where Rage melee is really good and the single target drops off. Earth is the same concept, where the range AoE and the single target kind of drop off compared to how good the melee is. But it's not terrible. It all depends really on crits. As you can see, like 18k for like 14%, 10%. If none of upheaval crits, that's going to be an issue. If you don't get any kind of crits on upheavals, that's going to be a shame. As well as no crits on Unstoppable or Tectonic Break, because obviously Tectonic Break can crit, up to the 30ks. And it didn't even get a crit there. But you can still pull out like 21, 22s, the odd 25s if you get some decent crits on the right powers. But you can also have below 20k, which, at 44,000 might, below 20k is pretty much unacceptable for a single target. But the other advantage is that even though that it's lower 20k damage, you're using a supercharge generator, which not too many single target power sets can do in their rotation. So you can have much more often Entombs, and Entomb hits pretty good on single target, as you'll see in the testing. So you do earn supercharge much more frequently for Eye of the Gemini, which kind of makes up for that single target damage. The same kind of concept as Rage melee, where you'd use, since you're using Relentless Anger, you're earning more Berserks for the melee single target, where at least Earth, you don't have to be dead melee. You can be like 5-10 feet away, depending on Unstoppable and Tectonic Break. But it's the same kind of concept where the single target is weaker, but you can make up for it by earning more supercharge to kind of even it out. But that's essentially the melee version of single target for Earth, and I'll show you the range here. Okay, so for the range single target for Earth, the one you'll be seeing more often in Elite Raids is because you can't consistently be in melee range, or anytime you want to be safer in this rotation is going to be this one here. Now the main change is that you're no longer running Scrap of the Soul Cloak, because there's no point. You're not running Unstoppable, so you won't be farming as much supercharge regen as you were previously. So in this case, you run the Gnorm Vernum, which is the new pet artifact. Basically, once you're in combat, it summons a pet that's going to set up a PI for you. So as you see, Earth and Water is going to set up the Crush PI and do some damage as well. So similar to like Robot Sidekick damage, which is basically just on top. But the main difference here is because of this loadout, I don't have anything that sets up Crush. Upheaval uses Crush. Amplified Heat Vision obviously is burning. Pebble Blast doesn't have any PI, and Fortified Golem. So if you weren't running the Gnorm pet, you'd run into an issue that you will have nothing to set up Crush. So then you'd have to use something like Debris Field. You might see that on other single target rotations because it sets up Crush. Because obviously in my other rotation, Unstoppable sets up Crush, so I'm always going to have the PI. But in this case, running the Gnorm is very important for this rotation for Earth, because it's going to set up the Crush PI, so you get the bonus on Upheaval, and you don't have to worry about, and obviously the Crystal obviously does more damage to crushed enemies as well. So that's very important for this artifact. Now the only difference in the artifact from like 120 to 160 is that 120 it's just single target, and 160 it does AoE PI. So if it's only a single target boss fight, you only need this at 120. You still get the pet damage, and then you get single target PI, where the 160 is AoE PI damage. So it just depends on the fight, but Gnorm is going to be very important for this rotation. That's going to basically make or break it, because without it, you're losing all the PI damage. So essentially this rotation, it changes slightly, where Upheaval in the previous rotation of melee single target, I was doing the entire Upheaval and then going back into my clip. This time I'm only going to do Upheaval twice, and then basically the initial Upheaval, then another one clipped with Heat Vision. Because like I said before, you can do Upheaval just normally like this, but because it's basically it's a combo, you can clip it as well. So if I do, it's probably easier to see the damage. Let me despawn a crystal here. So if I do Upheaval twice in a row, you just saw the 2 hits from it. Now it's going to summon the pet. It's okay. The pet damage is going to show differently. But obviously that's a good Gnorm pet. So basically if I clip it here, so if I do this and clip it there, that was a terrible clip. Let's do that again. So Upheaval, and then Pebble. So you can see I still get the 3 hits. So I'm just clipping the Upheaval combo damage with Pebble or with Heat Vision. So instead of just waiting for me to do the entire combo like you saw me do in the melee single target, I'm basically doing it once and then clip it. So I still get all the ticks from Upheaval, well, from the actual upheaval combo, you're clipping it. So it basically just speeds it up a bit. So then I'm doing upheaval, you know, 1 clip, and then upheaval, 1 clip, and then upheaval back, you know, back into heat vision. So that's essentially what the combo becomes there. So you know, let me just get back out of distance here for ignore him to get out of combat. So that's essentially what the rotation is there, which I'll show you. Now, loadout-wise, you do have Fortified Golem on here. So basically, there's going to be 2 separate situations. If you're just doing a single target boss, like say if there's no adds whatsoever, you get more damage by doing 2 Pebble Blasts and then going back into Upheaval ×2 into Heat Vision, Upheaval ×2 Pebble, than you would using Fortified Golem. But if there's adds, like say you're doing like FOA Elite or whatever on the Fate, obviously there's Fate, plus there's all those adds around. So then you would want to do Upheaval ×2 into Heat Vision, and then Pebble Blast, then hit Fortified Golem. So instead of hitting Pebble Blast twice, you're going to hit Fortified Golem, which basically just gives power to Crystal, and then Crystal does the AoE damage for you. So basically, if you want pure single target, it's just these 3, and then you hit Fortified Golem every once in a while, or clipping a trinket or soda or whatever. But if it's going to be an AoE, you want to do Pebble Blast and then Fortified Golem, so you get some more AoE damage as well as the single target damage from the boss. So basically, I think in my clips in the end of the video, you see me using both here. But if it's just going to be pure single, then you're just worried about the 3 there. But this is going to be the safe one, because obviously it's all max range. Upheaval's max range. Obviously it's max range here. Obviously Heat Vision's max range. You know, Pebble Blast is max range. Obviously Crystal's going to go forward, but Crystal's going to be max range as well. So this is more of the safer single target approach for more often for elite raids. Okay, so same thing, you guys get the gist of it there. Let's kind of go where we started. 22, 24, 21, 20, 21, 25. You know, obviously the shitty 18s with 13 and 15% crits, and then 24. So once again, it just, Earth single target doesn't have a lot going for it. The only single target ability is Pebble Blast, and you're stuck using Heat Vision like before anyway. It's similar to where Rage is. Rage just doesn't have single target abilities. You know, it just doesn't have that much going for it. That's why so many people go Rage Prec. Same thing with Earth. Like if you're you could do Might for AoE and go Precision for single target, because Precision single target Earth has much more going for it with, you know, having Crystal and Fortified Golem. It's just like, it's not terrible damage, but it's certainly by no means good. It is safer damage. You do have the option to do some more AoE damage as well. So if it's a boss target, like say Fate in Fellowship of the Arcane Elite, This single target rotation does do well in that case because you're still doing single target damage on Fate and you're doing all the AoE damage as well. So it's not so much like a single target focus loadout, it's more like an AoE focus like Shadow Gotham Elite, FOA Elite. It does really well there because Upheaval's AoE, the Heat Vision Explosion procs AoE, Fortified Golem with Crystal would be AoE. So it does good overall damage, it just doesn't do the most focused boss damage. Obviously, you can see there in the crits, 11, 26 was the nice crit parser, 13, 15, 14, 30%, 13%. So if it does get some decent crits on Pebble Blast, obviously you see like the 24 and 25k parses, which is okay for single target. That's by no means bad for Might single target. But you obviously see the lower crits, which is like 20, 21, because I'm getting 14, 15% crits. Which becomes the issue there. So it's just, if you get no crits on Upheaval or Pebble Blast, it can be some lower numbers, like more like bottom tier Might single target in terms of just over 20k. But if you get some like more consistent parsers for the crits, then yeah, it turns into like a semi-decent parser as well. But it just doesn't have that much going for it. But by no means is it bad. Plus you have Entomb, which is going to be good on single target as well, and the AoE. So with Earth for range AoE, it basically falls under the same principles as Rage as well, where it doesn't have too many options going for it. You'll find myself doing a lot of comparisons between Earth and Rage just because they're so common in terms of how the power sets are set up themselves. Huge differences for the tanking side, but in terms of its prowess for damage, Earth and Rage are very similar. The only major difference being Berserk, obviously, as well, in Supercharges, but Earth does have the best Supercharges in the game as well, besides the Berserk outliers. But we'll just get into that later. But as well, the range AoE, it falls into the similar kind of concept as I said before, but it does have some potential to it. Myself, I don't really use range AoE. Either it's going to be melee or most likely it's going to be like a single target fight, so you're using one of the single target armories. But if you do have to do range AoE, it's going to be Debris Field, Striking Stones, Upheaval, Fortified Golem, Crystal, and Entomb. Now, because there's no kind of supercharge regeneration in this one either, you can supplement your damage by running the Ghidorah pet, because you're going to have this pet anyway for the range single target where you're going to need it. Even though I have Debris Field setting up the PI, basically this is just going to add some extra damage as well as the Might as well. Obviously, it has a lot more Might than Scrap of Soul Cloak, which has only 381 base and only 3% Might, where the Gnome has the same kind of Might base, 381, but I get an extra 1% Might. And then obviously the 4% Prec, which the Soul Cloak won't have at all. So it's nice kind of from that aspect where it's a bit extra Might, and obviously the pet damage as well, just to kind of help you at range AoE. But obviously the rotation kind of follows as it goes. It's just going to be striking Debris Field, Striking Stones, then Upheaval, then clip the second Upheaval with Fortified Golem, and then going back and Striking Stones. So essentially you're hitting the powers off cooldown is essentially what it boils down to. But I'll show you that here. Okay, so you have it there with the range AoE. We'll kind of go back up to where it started. 35, 36, 35. The 30 obviously I stopped before because I ran out of power, because obviously it's a very power-intensive rotation. Striking Stones, Debris Field, R3 power cost moves, Upheavals 100, Fortified Golems 200. So it is power-intensive. But it's pretty much what you have with range AoE. By no means is 35, 36 good at 44k Might, but it's not terrible either. It's kind of right in between. So it's basically Earth suffers the most from range AoE. I've seen people use like heat vision. That's lesser damage. Upheaval just doesn't have. If you get consistent crits with upheaval, this can be really great range rotation. But as you saw in the single target parsers, upheaval can be really inconsistent about when it crits. Debris fields kind of like is a very decent dot. Striking stones is decent as well. You're still relying on crystal because you're using fortified golem every 6 seconds basically for crystals damage, and crystals damage is much weaker than it was compared to in the past during like AM days. So just overall, certainly range AoE is the weakest part of Earth. Basically, Earth is much more focused on the melee as compared to Rage as well. Okay, so in terms of Earth supercharges, Earth is very unique in the types of supercharges it has. It also has two 10,000 ones, but Entomb is more of like the pop and forget supercharge, like so many other common ones. The only thing with Entomb, it's not immediate damage. So if I hit Entomb, and you'll see it in the test as well, it's a few seconds later that you actually get the damage. So if you're on like a set of ads, you pop Entomb, and the ads die very quickly, you're going to miss that Entomb damage. So it's very situational to be aware that, you know, don't hit it if the ads are about to die, because then they're going to die before Entomb actually procs. If it's on like say if it's like a regular raid and the ads are very low health, well, you hit Entomb, it's going to be a few seconds later of all the DPS attacking the ads, so you may lose out on some of that damage from Entomb. Now Earthquake. Our Earthquake is basically the same concept as Jackhammer and Upheaval, which is basically a tap melee ×3 combo. So basically you still need 10,000 to activate, and then basically you do Earthquake 3 times to maximize all the damage. The only thing is it is possible to get interrupted in Earthquake, which can be really annoying. So you can get stunned out of it because you basically stomp the ground 3 times, which you'll see in the testing as well. So be mindful of that, but it is, as you'll see, very powerful as well. And then you got Meteor Shower as well, which is more like the pop and forget supercharge as a 10,000 cost. So let's take a look at their damage values. Okay, so on to the tanking side for Earth. Now, Earth tanking basically, technically there's 3. I don't really want to touch on the battle tanking aspect, because battle tanking, while along the same lines as battle trolling, I don't necessarily support battle roles for support roles. I believe if you are well versed in your power set and understand it and understand the encounter and the mechanics and everything, you can switch to more like a battle spec as long as the group can support it. It's just not for everyone. So if I go into say like, oh, do this as a battle tank, and you won't go and do that, and you struggle or die, or because your gear's lower or everything else, like there's so many variables with the battle support aspect. I don't want to give you any kind of disservice by doing that. So battle tanking is something that Earth can do it very well, just because of how Aftershocks and Jackhammer works, and with Brick basically as well, with the Brick tanking. But I don't really want to cover that here. If you understand Earth, you'll understand exactly what to do. It's not like it's complicated at all. It's just that I certainly don't want to have everyone watching this video go out and try battle tanking when it's not right for every situation. So let's kind of touch on the 2 aspects of Earth tanking. So basically Earth has 2 separate mechanics. So if we go to Earth itself, We're going to go here. Tank roll. So basically the gist of it is that you gain defense equal to 65% of your dominance while not blocking, and then 3% perception, which does nothing. So essentially it boils down to either brick tanking or aftershocks. So we can kind of touch on brick tanking here. So basically brick golem uses superpowers to restore and defend himself. You gain earth and bond, transferring a portion of incoming damage to brick while not blocking, and does not stack with stone skin, and stone skin is the aftershocks. So essentially what that actually means is when you summon brick golem, basically he is going to taunt and attack enemies, and basically it's going to transfer 66% or basically 2/3 of your incoming damage to brick. So that's basically say something hits for 100,000, 66% of that goes to brick, and you take the rest of the damage. So basically it helps. It's more, think of Earth as damage mitigation than actually like Earth is shields, Rage is healing back, Atomic is basically a mix where it's damage mitigation and healing back, self-heals, combo heals. Basically Earth is more damage mitigation than anything else. Like there's no self-healing. Well, you can technically heal brick with a fortified golem, which we'll get into that, but there's nothing like Rage or multiple shields like ice. It's basically all damage mitigation, so you're taking much less damage because of your higher defense as well as the damage transfer to brick. Then sexually, the other part of it is if we go down to upheaval. So basically stone skin, increasing your defense by 55% while not blocking, and doesn't stack with earth and bond. So basically what that means is that you can't have a brick out and have aftershocks at the same time to always have absorption. They're not going to stack with each other. So that's all that is. So it's basically either or. It's either you use brick or you use aftershocks. But essentially what that means is, as you saw back with the actual tank spec here, if we go back to where it said tank roll, since you gain defense equal to your dominance, that basically tells you how you should spec. So basically you're always going to be hybrid because you want that 5% dominance in resto. The critical healing chances don't really affect anything. Soothing Sands, which is the breakout for Earth, technically does heal. It's like Ire and like Shadow Restraint. Shadow Restraint doesn't heal. It's like Ire has a small self-heal, breaks you out, but the self-heal is very poor, so you wouldn't really need that anyway. But once again, so you're only going to take 10 and 10 to get down. You're not going to take any restoration because it's not needed. Even though you are running shields, it's just obviously defense matters much more to Earth than anything else. So you want to get as much defense as possible. So this means you're going to take the dominance. Same thing. Since you want as much defense as possible, you want the highest dom because 65% of your dom goes to your defense. That's essentially what I meant to say by that. So get as much dom as possible. So spec all your dom. Make sure you're wearing dom augments. Make sure you have bulldozer soda to give you extra dom. And then basically after that, you put everything into health as a secondary stat. So iconic powers, you're taking Amazon Deflection, Mesmerizing Lasso for a single target pull. And then you're taking Hard Light Shield as well. And then super speed, basically you're just taking the resistance and dash attack for a supercharge. Weapons, once again, weapons is more of a preference for like a personal preference. I use one-handed because it's got a fast lunge, fast block breaker. I know the combos well. You can use shield. You could use two-handed if you want. Ideally, what I recommend as a tank is to have a weapon that's going to have a fast lunge and a fast block breaker. Just something that's consistent to be able to be used in combat. Something that you're familiar with. But say you're using like Hand Blaster. Hand Blaster is not going to be good for a tank because it's got a very slow lunge. Same thing with like Bow. Bow's got a fast blocker breaker, but Hand Blaster has a really bad lunge. You're going to need lunge not only to be able to lunge bosses, but also to help to kite and get away and dodge mechanics, where shield lunge and one-handed lunge is much better suited for that aspect. But essentially it comes down to personal preference. So we touched on weapons, all those. So into the gear, in the weapon mod is always going to be absorption adapter. Basically, same thing. So you get a shield equal to 75% of your damage until 30% of your health is prevented. The head mod, you should have dash attack. If you're running a supercharge like dash attack or perfect poise, don't run envelop. Don't worry about that because envelop is just not where is it here? Envelop. Technically that's your self-heal, and it's just not convenient for Earth whatsoever. Same thing as it's like hibernation like ice. You just wouldn't use it. But if we go back to gear, But yeah, if you're the only supercharge you'd use, it would be like dash attack, perfect poise, stuff like that. So if you're going to use that, put that in the head. If not, then don't worry about it. Neck mod is always going to be fortified assault, just because that, so all your earth mechanics rely on not blocking. The back mod, accelerated jackhammer, that's more for aftershocks if you want to change it up a bit. So let's see if we look at the other back mods. Let's see, accelerated unstoppable, you're not going to really use that. Accelerated jackhammer, soothing sands, you're not going to use anyway. And there's really no accelerated gemstone shield. That's basically what it'd be. So it just depends. If you're using aftershocks, then use accelerated jackhammer, because obviously that's you need to be able to, if you get knocked out jackhammer, you need to be able to have that cooldown. But accelerated gemstone shield is going to be the if you're brick tanking, that's going to be a way to go there. And even gemstone shield works for aftershocks as well. It's just that you rely a bit more on jackhammer to be able to keep your aftershocks going active, which I'll talk about in a moment. Once I touch on that loadout. But either or, back mod, you could do jackhammer, you could do gemstone shield, completely up to you. Chest mod's always going to be hardy. Leg mod, there's no leg mod for earth tanking, so you don't have to worry about that. Hands, you could do max damage for a bit extra damage to earth. Regen shielding, the health scale doesn't really scale with that as well. The feet mod's always going to be tumbling master. In terms of the utility belt, once again, some of this is personal preference, but the best suited loadout for your utility belt is always going to have chronomatic emitters for the stuns. Is always going to have a breakout trinket. The personal dampening fields are handy. The Fellowship, the arcane ones are about 30, I think about 34k shield. So it does help and does stack. So basically you could do like Carlet shield, personal dampening field, or say brick dies, pop personal dampening field clipped with it, so a bit of extra protection. I use an orbital strike. You could use supply drop. You could use sidekick. And once again, that's more of a preference. You can run like a pet to help you kind of taunt. But ideally, you definitely want Chronos. You definitely want a breakout trinket. Those are a must. And the other two, you have kind of options. In terms of artifacts, once again, there's kind of a few different options. So basically, you're always going to have the Manacles of Force. Not only for your shield cooldowns, but for the unshakable state as well as the stats. You're always going to have Mystic Symbol of 7, once again, for the actual base stats as well as the extra defense and the healing from ads, which is very handy for brick tanking as well. I run the Refractor. You could also run like Eye of the Gemini if you're going to use a like dash attack or perfect poise consistently. Then you'd be able to give regen to the group. But in that, it's going to be Distal Refractor. So basically, those would be your three. It's highlighted that. I've pretty much used that setup in all my tanks. But if you're going to be consistently using Supercharge, the Gemini would serve you better than, like, say, the Refractor would. But that's pretty much it for the gear. Okay, so in terms of a loadout, we're going to touch on the brick tanking aspect first. So this loadout is going to be specifically if you want to brick tank as a mechanic. So you're always going to need Earthen Grip as your long range pull. It also sets up Crush, which doesn't really impact much unless you're using, like I said, like a juggle power that needs the PI. Epicenter is more like your pull and attack. Just helps gather up the ads. Gemstone Shield is going to be your main shield, as well as it's the strongest shield in the game for tanks as a personal shield, not like a supercharge. But it works a little bit different, just like Jackhammer, Upheaval, like Earthquake, the supercharge. As you can see, it says tap melee 3 times to create additional gems to increase the percentage up to absorb damage. So basically, if I just do like Gemstone Shield, hit it like a couple times, boom, you can see that there's basically 3 gems circling me. And then basically that's going to be my tier protection. So now if I go back to it, as you saw the 3 there. Now if I max out the taps, it gives me an extra 4. So say if I do like 1, it's going to give me 1 gem, 2 gems, 3 gems, all the way up to 4. 4 is ideally what you want to have because that's the maximum protection. So basically just keep melee tapping until you have that 4 created. And then basically do that clap animation. So as you see, build up, that's basically the max absorption. And then the nice thing about Gemstone Shield as well is technically the why it's so strong is that while you're doing Gemstone, you gain, like say you're in the middle of combat and you start hitting Gemstone Shield, you actually go through the absorption tiers of 1 and 2 and 3 before you reach 4. So you basically gain the absorption from those earlier tiers. So basically, it just kind of like, say if I did like a max gemstone shield like this, and then got attacked by an enemy, this might absorb, say, like, 100k damage. It could be more than that, but say like 100k damage. So it's just a big hit, 100k damage, it took it. But if I'm getting attacked while I'm summoning it, even though the max gemstone is going to take 4, like the 4 gemstone shield max is going to take 100k damage. If I'm doing this while I'm taking damage, it actually adds a bit of the tier each time. So over the course of maxing out gemstone shield, I may actually now take about 250k damage as opposed to 100k damage just at being hit by the max tier. So I'm basically getting more shield out of it as I'm doing the extra taps. It may kind of sound a bit confusing, but that's how you got to think of it there. So instead of like, oh, the boss is going to hit me with a skull attack, I'll just hit this and be ready for it. Boom, you take that damage. But if you're getting hit by a bunch of ads, or say like a big dot, while you do gemstone shield to max it out, you're also gaining the absorption from those earlier tiers. And then obviously brick golem, that's going to be the staple of it. Fortified golem is going to give power. It's supposed to shield. I'm going to show you why that's a bit buggy and the issue with the brick tanking after I kind of go touch on the loadout. There are some issues not only with fortified golem but with brick in general, which make it a bit inconsistent. But you're always going to have fortified golem regardless if you're brick tanking. And basically we have hard light shield rounding it off. Now, you do have some choices here. You could run dash attack. You could run Amazon deflection. Where did that go? Amazon deflection, hard light shield. Basically, this is just your personal preference. I prefer hard light shield because over like dash attack and Amazon deflection, because say if brick dies, which is going to happen, and that's usually the issue. So when you have brick out, everything's all fine and dandy. As you can see from that aura there that's around me, that just means that the damage transfer is active. So say brick dies, brick is dead, now I lose that damage transfer. I'm basically much more vulnerable than I would be normally. So basically I'm just taking massive damage. What I'm going to do, okay, so I got to resummon brick. I can just hold the resummon, or I can get it off quicker, like say brick clips with my breakout trinket. Okay, now I've got brick. Now I had immunity there, that took like less than half a second to get out. So basically when brick dies, you want to have brick resummon as fast as humanly possible. And you want to do that more or less with a shield to protect yourself while you resummon brick. So say if like brick dies again, you're tanking the ads in Tala, brick just died, I can summon brick with hard light shield. So now brick is about to resummon to start the damage transfer, but I have hard light shield active as well to protect me. Now, if I had Amazon deflection, I can't clip brick with Amazon deflection, and I can't really clip brick with dash attack. You need hard light shield. So that's why my preference is to run hard light shield. Hard light shield still is impacted by the same bugs that it can be canceled by healer shields. You can't cancel the clip. The clip is still going to work. It's just that you may not have that damage absorption from hard light shield because it might get canceled by healer shield. But that's why I run stuff like that. It's the same thing. Personal dampening field will work as well. So normally the brick summon would be like, puts his hands out. There we go. Brick's out. So in that, couple seconds it took to summon that, I'm not doing anything. I don't have any damage absorption. I don't have a shield up. I'm just relying completely on the healers. But if I clip it with either a breakout trinket or hard light shield, or even like these personal dampening fields, brick clip, brick's out. I've got a shield out. You mind it's not like a strong shield, but that's best practice for brick tanking, is that when brick dies, you want to clip it with a shield so that you can get it out quickly. Gemstone shield's not going to work just because of how it works. Like say if I try to clip it with gemstone shield, or actually does it? Yeah, it does, sorry. I thought it didn't for whatever reason, but just ignore that. So same thing, you can clip it with gemstone shield. Just remember that you can't just clip it and stop. You have to max out the gemstone tier so to keep melee tapping. So yeah, gemstone, basically that's just gemstone shield, hard light shield, the breakout trinket, and personal dampening field. So I got 4 possible clips if brick dies, and brick will die. And that's the issue with brick tanking, is that when brick dies, you're much more vulnerable because you've got no kind of protection. Basically, you're just like a squishy tank. And then fortified golem, like I said, technically it's supposed to shield brick and then give brick power. It's going to give Brick power, but you're going to see in the example that I'll show you in a moment that it doesn't actually shield him. That's a bug. So it's just Brick tanking is really good, but at the same time, there's a lot of inconsistency with Brick with the bugs that I'll show as well. So let's kind of touch on that example a little bit more. So basically, like I said, with the Brick tanking loadout, you're going to need a pull. You're going to need basically a second pull. You don't necessarily need this. You can run like Unstoppable, like for the juggle. Does well as well. Like it's a knock up and juggle. But I certainly like Epicenter because Earth and Grip is kind of a bit awkward for pulling multiple enemies. It's just great for like range pulling, but it's not like Inescapable Storm where it's going to be like a big long range AoE pull. So you do need Epicenter to help gather adds. Obviously, Gemstone Shield is going to be 100%. And then your loadout, Brick Golems are going to be 100%, Fortified Golems can be 100%, and you should be running Hard Light Shield as well just because it's more convenient. But at the same time, you certainly could run Amazon Deflection or Dash Attack if you chose to. So let's touch on Brick a little bit more here. Okay, so we're in Doom Metropolis here. Just kind of show a better in-depth example of Brick and how its functionality is. So if I stand in here, Doomspore, that's like 12k, 15k, 13k, 14k. Now if I have Brick out, you know, 4k, 5k, I'm about to die here, you know, 2k, 5k, 4k. So that's basically the example of the damage transfer. What you saw there as well, just see how Brick did Jackhammer. When Brick does Jackhammer, look in the top left corner. Jackhammer basically drains Brick's entire power bar. And when his power bar is empty, obviously he's not self-healing himself. So if I was going to do Fortified Golem right here, see now, he's just basically got his power bar nearly full. And you can see he's starting to heal himself, that 26k and then the 10k. That's Brick's healing himself with power. So that's the issue that you have to remember is that if Brick is going to aggro, like if you see him doing Jackhammer or aggro the enemies for you on your behalf, all his power is gone. And when his power is gone, that means he can't heal himself. He can be healed by healer powers if they have NPC power healers, like Consume Soul, that heals pets. Some healers don't necessarily run that ability or other abilities, like Electric Galvanize heals pets. But it's going to be more so up to you to heal Brick than the actual healer. So let's kind of get Brick down here. So I want to show you his max health calculation. I just have to get him to run out of power. Come on, there we go. Okay, so Brick's out of power. As you can see, he healed himself a little bit. Now he's basically out of power, won't be able to heal himself anymore. As you can see, he's going to die. Now, basically, the reason why I did this is that if you go to Eye of the Gemini restores 3% health and 2% supercharge as a tank. So basically, he's going to restore 3% of Brick's health, maximum health. So by this calculation, we can actually get how much Brick actually has as max health at CR270. So if I drop Dash Attack here, so Brick is getting healed for ticks of 3798, which is going to be 3% of his max health. And then if I hit, so basically keep that calculation in mind for a second. Then obviously if I hit Fortified Golem, he's getting to heal himself. The other thing as well, another example as I'll show here. So basically, let's kind of take a look at that damage calculation first. So you saw the ticks of 3798, that's 3% of Brick's max health. So basically, if we do that calculation where if we divide 3798 by 3%, we get 126,600. So that means Brick's max health at CR270, because I'm only in 270 tank here, so obviously for 273 it'd be a little bit higher, but essentially at CR270, Brick's max health is 126,600. So that's basically what Brick's health is at that level. Okay, so the other example that I want to show with Brick is that how Fortified Golem is a bit bugged. So basically, Fortified Golem is supposed to shielding it from damage and restoring power to it. So obviously, you've seen the animation of the shielding, which is supposed to be the gemstone shield around Brick. So see, if you look at the top left-hand corner in Brick, he's got no power and he's about half health roughly. So when I hit Fortified Golem, he's supposed to get power as well. He's going to be shielded from the damage. But if I go up to this spore here, I'm actually going to wait till I've got a bit more health here. So essentially what you're going to look for is that when I go to the spore pool, Brick, and I hit Fortify Golem, Brick is still going to take damage. His health is still going to drop until he's got enough power to heal himself. So the issue is that if you're in a raid and then if Brick's out of power and getting low on health and you hit Fortify Golem, Brick is supposed to be shielded from some damage while he gets some power to heal himself. But that shielding is not actually being applied. So that's the issue that's leading to a lot of easy Brick deaths, because you pop a shield, you pop Fortify Golem, Brick doesn't heal himself immediately, and then you run into the issue that he's not shielded. So then Brick dies, and then you die because Brick was squishy, and then you're squishy when Brick dies. So if I take a soda here, so basically I'm going to go over here. Brick's going to almost die. As you can see, I hit Fortify Golem. See? His health is still dropping. He's almost still dead right now. And you saw Brick just died. So even though I hit Fortify Golem, which is supposed to shield Brick, he died. Because the shield, that gemstone shield animation, did not apply whatsoever. So Brick couldn't heal himself fast enough even though I hit Fortify Golem and he had power. He tried to heal himself at the end when he did envelop. But he ended up dying because the shield is bugged on Fortify Golem and doesn't apply. So that's what's leading to a lot of easy deaths in ad situations, or dot, like say Hive Elite with the Terror dot, with the Madness dot, just a bunch of ads in general like in Shatter Gotham, or the pools in Fellowship of the Arcane. So because Fortify Golem is broken and not actually shielding powers and not shielding the pets, they end up dying. Same thing with like Crystal if you're using Fortify Golem, but it's more of an issue with Brick, obviously, as you just saw. Once Brick is dead, I'm taking massive damage again because I don't have damage transfer active. So that's the main issue with Brick, as well as you're going to see in the next clip as well. The other issue with Brick is that when you resummon him, he doesn't always appear in the top left-hand corner. So then he's gone. Like Brick is out, but you don't see his health bar. You don't see anything. So you're like, oh, you have no idea what his health is or what his power is. So basically, you're blind. So basically, in the next raid clip in Fellowship, if you look in that top left-hand corner, obviously I have Brick out and someone on my loadout, but I have no recollection where he is because I can't see his power, can't see his health bar. It's just bugged out and disappeared. So basically, Brick tanking is still great. It's just that there's a lot of issues surrounding the consistency of Brick, Fortify Golem, and Brick's health and power. Okay, for the second Earth tank mechanic, is going to be Aftershocks. If we go down to, like, say, Jackhammer, so basically, like I said before, Stone Skin, increasing defense by 55% while not blocking, and does not stack with Earthworm Bond, which is basically Brick tanking. So essentially, the Aftershocks, it's very similar to Brick tanking. So instead of Brick, you have Jackhammer. You're still going to have a pull, you're still going to have Epicenter to gather ads. You're still going to have Gemstone Shield, obviously, because it's the best shield. You're going to have Jackhammer. That's basically going to be your main Aftershock, and then Hardlight Shield and Dash Attack. Because basically, you do take a bit more damage as Aftershocks, especially if you don't have Aftershocks active. So you do want some shields to kind of mitigate that. Now, that being said, you don't necessarily have to run Dash Attack. You can run Perfect Poise. You could run Amazon Deflection. It's basically your preference. I've seen plenty of each. It basically just boils down to personal preference. I kind of like Dash Attack because it also frees me from control effects as well, but it is a supercharge, so if you're not spamming a supercharge for the entire time, I don't feel like I always need Dash Attack. It's basically just there for like those oh shit moments, because I've Gemstone Shield and Hardlight Shield are more than enough. But it essentially is completely up to you. There's no wrong answer. It's not like you're wrong running Amazon Deflection. It's not like you're wrong running Dash Attack or Perfect Poise. It's basically your preference at that point. But essentially, all Aftershocks is basically, if I do Jackhammer here, so if we do like a couple seconds here, as you can see here, these stone skins, so basically those kind of rocks, that are applied to my body. That just means that I have Aftershocks active, which is basically just a damage reduction. And as you can see, that disappeared there. So basically the goal is, as you can see, if I go kind of back to Jackhammer here. So basically each additional hit increases the duration of Stone Skin. So essentially you just want to keep Aftershocks up. So like say if I just do Aftershocks a couple times, that didn't actually apply. So if I do like Aftershocks a couple times there, I've got Stone Skin active. You know, if I start gathering ads and start attacking, pulling ads, maybe just pop like a gemstone. Same thing, I'm walking around. It's eventually going to drop. See, Stone Skin just dropped. When Stone Skin drops, I'm taking massive damage. Think of it just like a brick dying. So you certainly don't want Stone Skin to drop. So generally what I try to do is Jackhammer for the entire duration of Jackhammer's cooldown. So it's about 3 seconds. So if I Jackhammer, why didn't that apply there? So Jackhammer for that. And then basically after you Jackhammer for about 3 seconds, it buys you about it's about 15 seconds or so of Stone Skin before it drops. So basically, you know, Jackhammer for 3 seconds. If you got to move around, pop another shield, etc. You know, go back into Jackhammer for 3 seconds. Same thing, pull some ads. You know, back into Jackhammer. You know, that's essentially what Aftershocks is. You don't have to sit in Jackhammer the entire time, because obviously it's going to be way too much of a power drain, and that's essentially what you do just for damage. Battle Tank is just going to sit in Jackhammer the entire time because it's a juggle as well. You don't have to do this for Aftershock tanking. It's not necessary. It's not like if I stop doing this, I'm going to have, you know, Stone Skin for minutes and minutes because I did it for so long. It's still going to drop after like 18 seconds or so. So basically, it's more, you know, Jackhammer when you can. If you got to move around, counter the boss, you know, go back into Jackhammer. You don't have to stand entirely in the duration. You just have to make sure that you keep doing it because you definitely don't want Stone Skin to drop. But that's essentially it. Aftershocks is very straightforward. There's no kind of tricks to it. The only thing, you can technically use Upheaval as well. Upheaval is a bit more annoying to kind of kite with. But say you can't melee boss whatsoever, like say if it's like Ultimate Soldier or something, and you just can't get close to him at all, because he's going to do flamethrower or big combos on you, then you use Upheaval to be your basically range Aftershock. But essentially, Aftershocks with Jackhammer, just, you know, it's much easier. You can still do it from range. So like say if it's like Tala first boss and you got a ranger, you know, you just basically Jackhammer from range. You know, move around. If you got a counter, you know, go back. Do Jackhammer at range. It's much more fluid with Jackhammer compared to Upheaval, but it's the same concept. If you basically Upheaval and Jackhammer will give you Stone Skin. But that's essentially it with Aftershocks. It's just you're making sure it just come down to not letting Stone Skin ever drop. Sometimes you can get juggled out or stunned out of Jackhammer, which is why that accelerated Jackhammer mod is handy, just to make sure you always have that on cooldown. But as you can see here, just from running around and doing Jackhammer ever so often, I haven't dropped Stone Skin once while we've been talking. Just because I'm keeping that duration up. And that's basically all Aftershocks is. So basically what I'll do right now is kind of touch on like an overall summary of like Aftershocks versus brick tanking. Okay, so you may be asking yourself, or asking in the comment section, what do I use? Do I use brick tanking or do I use Aftershocks? What's better? What's the better tank? Is it going to be Aftershocks like this, or is it going to be brick tanking? Now, there's no really right or wrong answer to this. It's all situational. Basically, anything you can do as a brick tank, you can also do in Aftershocks. And then anything you can do in Aftershocks, you can do as a brick tank. It's some more situations are more difficult for others for either Aftershocks or brick tanking, but it's not like, oh, this is going to be impossible as a brick tank, or this is going to be as impossible as Aftershocks. Each mechanic can do each type of raid. It's just that certain ones excel in different situations. Like say, if it's a heavy dots, like say Fellowship of the Arcane Elite, you're going to have brick dying way more often because he's got those pillar damage, you've got the pool damage, you've got like obviously Fates damage, the ads. Let's say Shatter Gotham Elite on Tala, you've got Tala's fireballs, you've got the strafing runs, you've got the madness dot, you've got the ads. You know, there's a whole bunch of damage sources all at once, and basically that's where brick doesn't do well. If brick is going to die consistently throughout a fight, that's an issue as a brick tank, because basically you're relying almost completely on the heals if that keeps happening, because obviously, Gemstone shields 18 seconds, Harlot shields 30 seconds, the personal dampening field is 45 seconds, so is the breakout trinket. So you're going to basically, if brick keeps dying, you're going to run out of things to clip with it, which leaves you in a very vulnerable state. Does it happen all the time? No. But if it does find yourself like that's happening to you, then you may want to look at Aftershocks. But at the same time, Aftershocks, if you're in a situation where you kind of have to keep moving or blocking, or Stonekin's going to drop and you can't consistently jackhammer, then Aftershocks is going to be an issue as well. Generally, the rule of thumb that I find and what other Earth tanks find is that if it's a very high adds, then you want to use Aftershocks. So say like you're going to do like a solo last boss of Fellowship of the Arcane. If you're going to do like Faust and Tikal and Clarion, like in the example clip here, not solo, but the example clip here for tanking, when I tank the ads, Aftershocks lends itself better to that than brick tanking. But at the same time, I did brick tanking for like Shadow Gotham Elite first on Tala and last boss. So once again, you can do either or. It basically comes down to your preference. If Fortified Golem was fixed, and if the issues of brick were fixed, then brick tanking I feel would be a lot better than Aftershocks. But brick tanking is just less consistent than Aftershocks. Aftershocks, as long as you can keep it up, is very consistent. But brick tanking, there's a little bit too many inconsistencies with trusting it. Because if you can't see brick's health, then it's basically you're just guessing. You're just hitting Fortified Golem every 6 seconds and just hoping for the best. And then if his brick is going to keep dying because you can't shield it, or the healers aren't healing brick with their pet powers, etc., then it just becomes an issue like that. So in the past and now, I find myself gravitating more towards Aftershocks. But once again, there's no really right or wrong answer. It's basically things are better for this raid, might not be better for the next one. Like say Crown of the Thorns Elite final boss on the ads, brick tanking sucked. Brick tanking was brutal for that fight just because the ads hit like trucks, and if brick died, basically you were the next one to die. It's the same thing with like atomic ores dropping. Like when the atomic ore dropped, you're taking massive damage. Same thing with brick tanking with brick dies. So Aftershocks was much more basically easier to do Crown of the Thorns because of all those ads. So essentially that's what it boils down to. Like there's no right or wrong answer with brick versus Aftershocks. It just comes down to what puts you in the better position to survive. So take care, guys. If you have any further questions, just put them in the comment section below. Hope you enjoyed everything.